from road rage to mutant microbes to crime epidemics, internet predators. Many people will say, so what? Okay, so we get a little bit bent out of shape about some things. It's your assertion that there's real harm that can be done.
There's definitely real harm done through this culture of fear. The most basic way to show that is that we spend billions, truly billions, I've counted it up, billions of dollars on products, on public policies, on all kinds of programs we don't need. That if we eliminated those, or at least cut them back massively, we would be roughly as safe as we are now, maybe even safer in some cases. That alone is a huge deficit that we face, but it goes way beyond that. What's the number one psychological disorder in this country? Anxiety. Now, part of that is genetic, part of it's inborn and so forth. But clearly, living in this frightening environment, this kind of hyped environment where we're constantly hearing these scary stories, contributes to that, and that's something that is detrimental to us as individuals and as a society. The more people are fearful in their own communities, the less they participate in those communities, the less they're engaged in political processes and civic organizations, the less they're shopping, all sorts of things that create serious problems within a community. So the consequences are real and they're severe. There's another one that's often overlooked, and that is while we're spending all this money and energy to try to deal with what are actually very unlikely sorts of outcomes, dangers that are really very unlikely to affect very many people at all, that means we have a lot less money, a lot less energy, a lot less attention to spend on more serious dangers. What were we worried about in the summer of 2001? Most people, if they think hard and they're over the age of about 20, they'll remember. What were we afraid of in the summer of 2001? What was on the news? You couldn't turn on the news without hearing about it. Shark attacks and a missing intern, Chandra Levy, in Washington, D.C. The stories made it sound like if you got near a beach, you'd be gobbled up by a shark. If you let your daughter go to Washington to be an intern, you're out of your mind. And, I mean, this was wall-to-wall coverage. Guess what? Shark attacks weren't up. Abductions of interns were not up. And what was about to happen? The most horrible attack in our nation's history. You couldn't see coverage of terrorism. You couldn't see coverage of international affairs, international relations, and so forth on the news, hardly at all. We were too busy focused on these little dangers. Now, I don't want to suggest that we could have stopped what happened. Some people say we could. There's some reason to believe we could. That's not the point. The point is we should have at least been thinking about bigger dangers. If not that one, then another one or two or three others. We had tens of millions of Americans without any health insurance at the same time. We might have been spending a lot of attention on that, or the state of the public schools, or anything else you want to talk about that's a serious danger instead of shark attacks. We buy all sorts of products and services that we hope will make us safer, that really protect us from extremely unlikely outcomes. So we buy all kinds of security devices for things that are probably never going to happen, when instead, if we did things like fix the carpet in the house, we'd probably be better off. As a society, we do this in huge ways. So we now have hundreds of thousands of people, some would say a little less, some would say tens of thousands of people, who are in prison, who pose no danger to other people. They may pose a little danger to themselves at worst. And we're spending huge sums of money to keep them there. And I think we should ask ourselves, why are we doing that? And is that a wise expenditure? We've spent now lots and lots of money to make schools safe from the sorts of incidents that we all recall, like the Columbine incident. We're not spending the kind of money we need in many cases in many schools to update the buildings. Many are not in great shape. for up-to-date classroom materials and textbooks and so forth, the sorts of things that are crucial, that are essential for education. I'm not talking about controversial issues where conservatives and liberals can disagree. I'm talking about the sorts of things that any rational person would agree we need to do. Instead, we keep reacting to these overblown fears and scares and spending tremendous amounts, and if you add it up, it comes to tens of billions of dollars, in ways that are really mostly wasted.
You mentioned in your book, The Culture of Fear, that you originally had a theory that these pseudo-dangers, to use your term, were microcosms or little examples that we could get our mind around of larger problems, but then you said you dismissed that.
I had thought, going into this research, that probably what was happening is that these dangers that were blown way out of proportion were really just minor versions of really serious things. What I found is, unfortunately, something else entirely was happening. They weren't like that. Instead, we were focusing on issues that I call misdirection or misdirected attention. Misdirection is a magician's term. If I want to make a coin disappear from this hand, I got to get you to look over here for a minute while I get rid of it, right? So get you looking over here, get rid of it. That's what misdirection's all about. And I found the same thing in these dangers. Rather than being microcosms of big dangers, they're just little dangers that don't really matter. The big dangers we're not paying attention to because we're so busy looking at these little ones. We've been misdirected. Misdirection has occurred and we're looking in the wrong places. Sometimes this is very intentional. If I'm a politician, I'm better off, frankly, getting you to worry, getting my constituents to worry about a problem I can take care of than a big problem that either I'm going to have to raise your taxes for, or that I don't have any program that I have much faith in is going to work, or that I can't get the legislature to support anyway, or whatever. Better for me to get you to pay attention and worry about something that I know I can take care of. If I have you focus on, for example, kidnapped children, well, the probability that there's going to be very many of those kidnappings while I'm in office is tiny. So guess what? I took care of the problem. Or at least it's not there. You don't blame me for it. If I talk to you about health insurance, knowing that a high percentage, a substantial percentage of my constituents don't have health insurance for some part of each year, and there's not much I can do about it, you're going to hold me accountable later. And even during the election, you're going to say, oh, he's going to raise my taxes. So it works much more to my advantage to keep you focused on these small problems that I can handle or that will take care of themselves anyway.
One of the things we're going to do is provide some specific advice as consumers of information and what we call truth-driven thinkers, at least to help people become aware of their emotion-driven thinking tendencies and fallibilities. What specific pieces of advice might you recommend?
I recommend to people that they pay attention above all to three things. First off, if you're hearing a scary story, who's benefiting from bringing this information to you? Are they selling something? Are they trying to win an election or sell a product? If so, ask whether it's really as dangerous as it sounds. Secondly, how are they promoting this to you? Very often, the way they'll be doing it is by suggesting that there's some trend or epidemic or widespread danger, when really the only evidence they have is one or two scary examples. Then you need to ask yourself, what's the real trend? How likely is this? How widespread is it? And then the third is internal. Ask yourself, why are you reacting to this? What is this tapping here? Now, it's partly the fault of the fearmonger. They know how to tap into these things. But ultimately, it's up to you to say, well, why is this working? Why am I now scared to go to my local park? Why am I now scared that something's going to happen that I better buy this product to protect myself against? What is this tapping into? And then, by identifying that, instead of just believing what you're hearing, you can get a grip on your own reaction to it.